morning, ma'am. Shall we start
This
now?
call is now being recorded.
Shall we
Yeah,
start
sure.
now?
Very good morning. Am I audible clearly?
Yes, ma'am. Shall we
Yes,
start
please.
now?
Yes, sure.
Good morning, all. On behalf of IOT Academy, I welcome you all for the fourth session of National Level Faculty Development Program on Basics of Research and Funding Opportunities. Let me introduce the resource person of today's session, Dr. Neha Seth. Dr. Neha Seth is working as an assistant professor at School of Commerce and Management, Central University of Rajasthan. She is a PhD holder from the Department of Management Studies, Indian Institute of Technology, Roorkee, and postdoctoral from Faculty of Management, University of Delhi. She has written numerous research papers for national and international journals and has presented a number of papers in international and national conferences. She has delivered lectures in various academic programs at reputed institutions. She has also organized a number of events like national and international conferences, workshops, and guest lectures. With this, I hand over the session to Dr. Neha. Ma'am, please.
Thank you, madam. Thank you once again for giving me the opportunity to come in front of you and being in a community of these scholars and academicians and share the limited knowledge I have. So the topic that was given to me for the day was about PhD dissertation, or I can say it is about the art of writing PhD dissertation. So for this 1 hour, I'll be discussing the same thing from various aspects, from the various views. And in case any of you have any query or doubt or any question, if you want to ask in between, you can always write in the chat box. So I'll be sharing my screen so that you can see the slides as well. So I hope my slides are visible.
Yes, ma'am, it is visible, ma'am.
Okay. So we'll be starting with a very basic thing, that what do we understand by the term dissertation, as it is written in the title. Today we are talking about the basics of the research. So I'll be starting with, again, the very basic thing. And I'm presuming that the audience are mix of like research scholars and various academicians from national-wide institutes. So I guess using English language is convenient to everyone who is there in the meeting right now.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. So we'll be starting with, again, the very basic thing, that what is dissertation. So basically, whenever we are getting registered for any degree program, be it a master's degree or a MPhil degree or a PhD degree, for every degree that we need to hold at the end of the time period or at the end of the duration, we look for, or we need to submit a document. Okay, it is in a form of a small book, okay, which is evaluated, and based on which our performance is evaluated, and based on our performance will be given the degree. So basically, a document which is required to support that academic degree for that professional certification that presents the author's research and result. Okay, so it is done in master's degree as in the name of a research project. In MPhil degree, of course, we have to write our MPhil dissertation. Then in PhD degree, we call it in the name of thesis that we write and we submit for evaluation, so that we'll get that certification for which we are applying. So again, it is a kind of document which is in the form of book, okay, which is submitted by the candidates who is looking forward to get that degree. So when we are talking about thesis writing, it is regarded as one of the most important notion in expository writing. So where we have to give very detailed information about our topic, about our research, what we have done, what are the results, how it is going to impact the society, what are the implications and everything. So basically, it is a detailed document that we need to submit at the end of the course. Okay, so before writing or before finalizing or before even initiating the research work, we need to work on a problem. Okay, we have to find the problem, where the problem is, because once we will have that problem, then only we can proceed our research work on that particular problem. Okay, for that, after determining the problem, we need to have a very strong thesis statement, which is also known with the name of problem statement. So basically, a thesis statement emphasizes on the study's idea, the concept, okay, the topic on which we are going to work. Okay, it expresses the argument, against which we are going to conduct our research, or the views that crystallized into a single statement. And now our thesis actually revolves around this thesis statement. Okay, so basically a thesis statement is a complete statement or complete sentence that expresses researcher's position, where I am right now, where I need to proceed. So as a researcher, what my position is, it is clearly defined with the help of a thesis or a problem statement. So basically it narrows the topic down to a specific focus of investigation, in which area we need to focus, in which direction we are going to conduct our research. This is defined by our thesis statement. It establishes the direction for entire thesis. It also points forward to the conclusion where we are going to reach at the end of our course, at the end of our research. And it is stated in our introduction chapter. Basically, in the very beginning, we define our problem statement, okay, which forms the motivation of our study as well. Okay, it always takes a stand and justify further discussion. So basically, it is a statement which initiates the further discussion. Okay, it sets the directions, the mode, the scope of our research. So basically, it is not a statement of fact. Okay, there is nothing like where we are defining or stating the fact. This is something which defines where the problem is and how we are going to work on the problem, what solutions we can give after our research. Okay, my today's session will be more focused on the social sciences researches. So any of you, if you feel like discussing or maybe sharing something in between, you're most welcome. Okay, so here are two examples that I have quoted here. So when you can see that first statement, the statement of fact, which shows that there are some negative and positive aspects of the banana herb tea supplement. So whosoever taking the banana herb tea supplement may have some positive or may have some negative effect. Again, it is a very broad sentence. We don't know in what sense we are talking about these negative aspects or the positive aspects. So we have to narrow down our statement to reach to some direction in which we have to proceed our research, and it will set the scope of our research as well. So the arguable thesis statement from this statement of fact could be, because banana herb supplement promotes rapid weight loss that results in loss of muscles and lean body mass, it possesses a potential danger to the customer. So now it is clear that we are talking about banana herb tea supplement, whosoever consuming this. Now the focus is our consumers, okay, and it could lead to potential danger in the terms of health, okay. It affects or it promotes rapid weight loss that may also lead to loss of muscle or maybe lean body mass. So the direction is clear, what we are going to study, what are the reasons we are going to study, and what are the results that we are expecting. Okay, now this statement of fact is converted into a proper problem statement for a thesis. Okay, then there is another example for the same, like foul language is common in movies. Okay, again, it is a very general statement. We are not mentioning what kind of movies we are talking about, okay, and what kind of language. Are we comparing it with something, or we are just stating this statement? So nothing is clear. But when we have to put the statement, or when we have to take up research in this direction, we again need to clarify this. Okay, we need to define it really in a clear sense. So it shows that the amount of foul language, okay, the proper thesis statement could be, amount of foul language in movies is disproportionate to amount of foul language in real life. Now this statement shows that we are going to compare the language that is being used in movies or in real life. We are going to compare this. So the results could be yes, it could be possible. This is how we are testing our hypothesis based on this fact, or it could not be possible. The language that is being used in movies, yes, definitely it could be foul or reflect the real life situation, or it may not reflect the real life situation. Now the direction scope is defined when we are defining our thesis statement properly. Okay, so this is again a very strong statement, because from here our research work actually starts. Okay, this sets the direction that in what direction we have to move ahead, where we have to do our literature review. Before that, we are not even clear what we have to do. We often, you must have heard often that we need to do literature review first. We need to review a few literatures to read to or to make our synopsis or to finalize our proposal. But before that, we need to finalize in what direction and what would be the scope of our research. For that, we need to have this understanding first, that we need to have a very clear statement, thesis statement or problem statement, based on which our thesis will be drafted going further. Okay. So here is one more example which shows a strong thesis, which says that a strong thesis answers how or why about your topic through a specific language. Okay, how you are going to do and why you are going to do. Okay, the broad formula to think of a component of a weak thesis statement compared to a strong thesis statement. The examples are given below. Like in the first case, we can see the statement is the economic situation is bad. Again, this is a vague statement or an open-ended statement which doesn't show any direction. Okay, which could not lead us to any research or maybe any conclusion. And again, the variables that are coming in our mind may be different. Like there are people who might be thinking or relating economic situation with the stock market situation, or maybe the level of poverty, or maybe the level of employment, maybe the level of interest rates or investments or whatever. There are multiple variables that defines the economic statement, economic situation. So nothing is clear when we are talking about the first statement because it includes the broad noun. Okay, it is not defining the economic situation clearly. It includes very weak verb. Okay, and a vague or evaluative adjective. Okay, but this could be replaced by the example which is given at the lower end of the slide. And this broader noun could be replaced by a specific noun. The weak verb can be replaced by an action verb, which defines that how we are going to proceed. Then an evaluative adjective can be replaced by assertive predicate. Okay, so the statement can be converted, or a fact can be converted into thesis statement in this way, where the economic situation is replaced by the tax policies, because this variable we are considering to judge the economic situation. So the tax policies of the current administration threaten to reduce tax burden on middle class. Okay, again, this is clear that this is threatening, and who are affected? The middle class people are affected. Okay, now by sacrificing education and healthcare programs for everyone. So this will set the direction of your work, whether tax policies are affecting middle class because they are sacrificing maybe some part of their education or healthcare programs for everyone else. So this will set the proper direction of your thesis. So that is why a strong thesis statement is necessary, right? Before we proceed for writing thesis. Now, when we are talking about thesis, you are done with your area, you are now sure about your topic, everything is clear. And when it comes to writing or initiating the thesis work, so we will see the format, or it is a standard format generally followed throughout our nation. Okay, so we will start our thesis with the initial pages. Like in the very beginning, we have the title page or the front of the thesis, right? So title is the very first page of your dissertation, okay, or your thesis. Okay, the title page contains the author's name, the title of your, I can say the title of your thesis, the title on which you are working, the department you belong to, the institution you belong to, maybe your roll number, the time period when you are submitting, maybe the logo of your university as well. So these formats are generally designed by universities, and these are available to all the researchers when they are finalizing their thesis. Okay, so it is a standard title for all the departments, which is generally drafted by university administration, and we as a researcher follow that standard format for finalizing our title page. Now, this title page is followed by, when we open the thesis, these beginning pages like title page and the certificate from the supervisor and the scholar is gone. Then it comes to the acknowledgement. Now, again, it is something which is optional. You want to include it, it's good. You don't want to include it, it is not going to judge your research work based on the acknowledgement, whether you have added it or not. Okay, so you can choose whether to add acknowledgements or not. Okay, so if you're adding acknowledgements, you can start by thanking Almighty first, then maybe the supervisor, other faculty members, your peer group where you are working. Okay, and there may be supporting staff or non-teaching staff from whom you might have received any kind of help. So everyone and each one who has contributed to your research work in direct or indirect way. Okay, sometimes there are like non-teaching staff, maybe some peons, etc. are there in the department who are helping you in some or other way. So you can also thank them when you are adding your acknowledgement. Then you may add your family's name as well, because this kind of work is not possible when if you're not getting support from your family. So you can add whomsoever you feel thankful to your acknowledgements. Okay, then the next is abstract. Okay, abstract is like it's like a trailer to the movie. So it is like a trailer to our thesis. So basically it is a summary of your whole dissertation or whole thesis. Okay, it covers all the important points of your thesis. Okay, it for a reader, it sets the tone. Okay, like we see the trailer and we feel whether the movie is worth watching or not. Okay, similarly, when we read, when as a researcher or as an evaluator, I first try to read abstract, and I would like to judge how this thesis could be. Okay, how whether it would be really interesting to read this kind of thesis, or again it is just a regular work which might have done in past by number of researchers. So this abstract need to be included after acknowledgements. And the abstract, though it is given in the beginning, but it should be written at the end. Okay, once you are done with a whole thesis, it should be written at the end, because the summary is possible only when the whole thesis is written. Like trailer is possible once the movie is made. So then you can pick the most interesting scenes from the movie to make a trailer of that movie. Similarly, we pick all the interesting, results, or maybe methodology that you have used, maybe the test that you are incorporating, or maybe the motivation of your study. These kind of things may be added and in the abstract and can be given in the beginning of the thesis. Then table of content. Okay, it is like an index. Okay, so it is a list of topics or chapters or headings that are given along with the page numbers, on which page the particular chapter or the heading or any table or any figure is available. Okay, so this is given in the beginning so that again the reader, it becomes easier for the reader to reach to or to locate that particular topic or maybe chapter where he or she want to be. So as a reader, as an evaluator, if I want to skip literature review and I want to see what methodology is used, so this index can show us that the methodology chapter is going to start from this page, and I can directly open that particular page to go to this research methodology chapter. And this table of content is followed by list of figures and tables. So if your thesis has number of figures, number of tables, again a list can be made and it can be attached in beginning, so that if again the reader want to reach to a particular figure or a table, can directly reach to that particular table or figure. Then list of abbreviations. Okay, abbreviations are like short form of lengthy terms that are used in your thesis. So if you have used multiple or lot of abbreviations in your thesis, you can arrange this in the form of list of abbreviation, which can be arranged in alphabetical order, because it serves as the aid for the reader again to understand the terms. Suppose, for example, I frequently use like Bombay Stock Exchange or maybe National Stock Exchange in my research work. So as an abbreviation, these Bombay Stock Exchange can be used as BSE and National Stock Exchange can be used as NSE. And after writing it for first time, maybe in first chapter, I'm using National Stock Exchange, in bracket, I can show it as NSE. And then for the whole thesis, instead of writing National Stock Exchange again and again, I would rather prefer to write NSE. Okay, now if the reader is maybe opening up to second or third chapter directly, and he or she will find NSE term there, and he or she may not be familiar with the term. So he can refer to this list of abbreviation to understand what this NSE stands here for. Okay, so this is how this list of abbreviation will aid to the reader. It is a very helpful thing for the reader. Then glossary, again, it depends on the type of research work that you are doing. So some theses may need glossary, some theses may not need glossary. So if you are using very highly specialized terms that make it very difficult for the reader to understand, okay, in that case, this glossary will help the reader to understand the text better. So it is good to define such technical terms in the beginning as a glossary. So basically, it is like, a collection of small definitions, okay, or terms which are defined in the beginning to for the better understanding of the text. Okay, I hope I'm clear so far. Okay, fine. I'm taking it as yes, since we don't have any questions so far. Now, once these initial pages are done, we will move ahead with the chapters of our thesis. Okay, so the beginning, we will begin with, or very beginning chapter is our introduction chapter. Okay, it establishes the topic of research basically, and it provides the background information of for an effective work of your thesis. Okay, the conceptual framework is defined in the introduction, that how you are defining the scope of research, what is the state of existing research, okay, and what is the relevance of your work, what was the motivation behind picking this particular topic for research work. Okay, what are your research questions and what are your research objectives? Sometimes these research questions and objectives can be given, or there are people, or I've seen theses wherein these research questions and objectives are given after literature review is done. Okay, if your broader objective is fixed in advance, then of course this can be given in the beginning, and later on when you are doing the literature review, you will be able to extract proper gap in the research based on which you will have your objectives of research. Okay, so it depends, again, your supervisor and you, where you want to place your objectives, in the beginning or in the methodology chapter. Okay, then again, there are certain people who place their objectives in research methodology chapter also, because the gap is extracted from research methodology, and the objectives are sometimes also defined in research literature review chapter at the end. Okay, so basically introduction chapter is done to provide the overview of your complete thesis structure. In the end, you can give the chapterization as well, like what your first chapter is going to define, what your second chapter is going to define, third, fourth, fifth, sixth, and so on. Okay, so this could also be added to the introduction part of your, or introduction chapter of the thesis. Okay, so basically introduction establishes the research topics, it provides the background knowledge, it narrows down the focus of your study, and it clearly defines the research work. Okay, that is why this introduction chapter is defined, and as per my understanding, it may be possible there are people who are writing introduction chapter in the beginning, but as per my understanding, I prefer to write introduction of any paper, research paper, or this is how I guide my students to write the introduction at the end, because the introduction has to be really, really crisp. Okay, it sets the mode of researcher, that how the work is going to impact his mind, what findings he might be looking forward to, or it motivates the researcher to read your thesis, okay, to look at your results. So it has to be really, really crisp. And when how it is possible to write really informative and interesting introduction, when you know the background of your thesis, what is going to, or your thesis in detail. So introduction chapter should be written, as per again my understanding, at the end. Once your whole thesis is done, then you can write your introduction chapter, including all these points. Okay. Generally, the second chapter includes the literature review. So basically, literature review is something that forms the backbone of your research. Okay. your research is not possible if you don't have this backbone. If you don't have literature review, don't have, the background of your research, you won't be able to understand where is your research lying at present, what is the situation of your research, and in what direction, what is the gap in your research, and how you should move ahead. So in this, we need to collect the trustworthy and relevant sources. Okay, we have to look for good research papers, maybe articles, maybe some blogs or whatever, but it has to be trustworthy. Okay, we need to critically evaluate each of these resources that we require. Okay, and this sets the forth with our research. Okay, our thesis must relate the gap in literature, okay, that we need to analyze, and we need to propose a solution to these unsolved issues that are extracted from this literature review that we have done. So suppose we have studied maybe 150 or maybe 200 articles, or it is not, again, there is no fixed number for which you have to do your literature review. It could be 300, 400, 500 or 600 research papers that you may came across. But I'm sure there must be some gap that you are coming across. We have to look for that gap in literature, which will form the objectives of our research. Okay, so we need to look for that gap after doing this review of literature, that we need to analyze. We have to propose, and based on this only, we would be able to propose a solution for this unsolved problem. So the gap is like a problem for us. We have to propose a solution based on that. Now, the solution could be our research methodology. Okay, the methodology that we are going to use. We have to provide that lead to the research. We have to strengthen the previously existing research by giving support to that research. Okay, this will be our contribution to the research. Okay, so the major aim of doing literature review is addressing the gap in concerned literature and giving the solution to that. What we do once we are done with our literature review chapter, we try to extract a review paper out of this that we get published. So this is how me and my scholars work. We publish our literature review chapters. We publish our analysis chapters. And once we are done with publishing our analysis and literature review chapter, then we bind this in the form of thesis and then we submit it. Okay, it may not be practiced with everyone. So in that case, this literature review can be done in the form of a chapter, which may be included in your thesis. At the end of these slides, I can also show you a few literature review paper. I can show you that how you can make a literature review paper out of your literature review chapter that may be published. Okay. Then once you are done with your literature review, since you have found the gap in your research, the next step is to define the research methodology. So basically in this chapter, we define the overall type and approach of our research, that what kind of research we are proceeding with, whether it is a quantitative research or a qualitative research, whether it's a experimental research or an ethnographic research. Okay, we are just doing the analysis, we are playing with the numbers, or we are just studying the concepts and based on which we are reaching to certain conclusion. So all these need to be defined in research methodology. Then your data. Okay, if you're working on primary data, from where, what would be the sources of your data, from where you are going to collect your data? If you're working on secondary data, again, what are your sources of the data, from where you are going to extract your data? Okay, the method of data collection should also be mentioned, whether you are collecting it through a survey, through an interview, or you are getting it from the archives that are available. Okay, then if you are using some data source for collecting the data, like Bloomberg or CMI database or whatever, from wheresoever you are collecting the data, we need to mention this in this chapter. And the time period for which we are using the data. If suppose we are using the secondary data, then maybe for 10 years, maybe for 15 years, or whatever time period for which we are taking the data for our analysis, we need to define it very clearly, that why we have chosen this time period for our study. Randomly putting this statement that we are taking 10 years data will not justify your research methodology, basically. Okay, even if you are taking 8 years, suppose I'm doing my analysis in 2002 and I'll be taking 10 years data. So from 2012 till 2022, I'm taking the data. So I need to define that why I am starting with 2012 to collect my data. Okay, for end, of course, you can mention that in 2002, I'm doing my analysis work. That is why I'm stopping here for collection the data. This could be my end date, but I have to give the clear reason what is my beginning date and why I have chosen my beginning date as whatever data I've chosen. Okay, so it has to be clearly mentioned. Now, if you are collecting the primary data, then what is the time period in which you are collecting the data? Okay, what maybe if you are taking 3 months or 4 months, and what is the time period from which date to which date you have collected the data? Okay, this need to be mentioned very clearly in this chapter. Then elaborative details like when, where, with whom the ground of research took place. Okay, who all are your respondents, how you have reached, these kind of questions are also asked. So far we are using maybe some proxy softwares for analysis, like we were using eViews or we are using SPSS. Most of these are freely available, which are not the the authentic softwares. The proxies are available for these softwares. Okay, but these kind of questions are often seen nowadays, that if your institute doesn't have subscription to the original software, then how you have done the analysis? Okay, if you have used some proxy softwares, okay, or not the real or original softwares, then there may be some error in the analysis. There is a possibility of error in the analysis. So we need to justify this as well. If our institution doesn't have subscription to the original softwares, then we can access the software. We can take permission to some other institute where you have these original softwares, and we can go and do our analysis from these institutions. We can take help from these institutions. Okay. Then methods of analyzing the data, maybe statistical or discourse analysis, or whatever type of analysis you are using, you have to clearly mention in this chapter that this is how I'm going to analyze my data. Then materials or tools that may be used. So for scientific research, that what kind of lab, even if it is a non-scientific research, people like us are also using computer labs, Bloomberg labs, finance labs, these kind of labs for data collection and for analysis purposes. So what all lab equipments we are using, what all libraries or labs we are accessing during our data collection and analysis, what computer programs, if you are using some softwares for your analysis, we need to clearly mention in this chapter that these are the softwares that we are going to use for our analysis. Then a clear justification or evaluation of the methods. Now the justification or evaluation will come from your literature review. You must have done literature review. From there you can justify that why you are picking this data, why you are picking these methods and tools for your analysis, what is the time duration. Everything need to be justified very clearly in research methodology chapter before proceeding to our analysis. Okay, once you are done with the research methodology, okay, the analysis will be done. Okay, and these results, whatever results we are getting, need to be present very clearly in our thesis. Okay, so a concise state every result outcome should be presented in our thesis. It should include the descriptive statistics like the characteristics of the data, which defines the mean, median, mode, standard deviation, whether your data is normal or not. Okay, so descriptive statistics defines the characteristics of the data. This needs to be mentioned here. And not just this, the inferior statistics of the tools or of the data, like what are the p-values, or if you're using any other test, maybe t-test or whatever test you are using for your studies, the statistics should be clearly mentioned using the tables in your this chapter where you are presenting your results. Okay, it should state a brief order how the results are associated to the findings of the question. So in beginning you have your research questions. So now you have answers to your research which are hidden in these tables or your results. Now you have to briefly show here in your results that how your findings are answering the research questions that you have proposed in the beginning. Okay, whether the findings are supporting your hypothesis or not. Okay, you have to mention the figures and tables in case they can help the reader to understand the result in a better sense. So sometimes the table that we are getting may be irrelevant to us. Only the p-value is relevant for us to mention or to show whether our hypothesis is accepted or not. But if giving the table in whole, if it supports, if it help the reader to better understand your results, it's better to give it. If you cannot give it in these chapters, between these chapters, because of any reason, maybe sometimes the space is a big constraint, so in that case you can put these tables in annexures in the end of the thesis. Then we have to report all the results that are pertinent to our research questions. So since we have raised the questions in the beginning, these results will show or presented in such a manner that they are answering the research questions. Okay. And try to avoid your interpretations when the results are given, because you should have a separate section for interpretations. Okay. Like this. There must be a separate chapter for discussions and interpretations, maybe future scope of research or maybe the limitations of your study. So it may be given the name of summary, conclusion, and interpretation. Yeah, summary and discussion. Okay, summary, discussion, and future scope of research. So it depends on you that how you are going to name this chapter of your thesis. But these are the points that should be included after the results are given. It should include your interpretations, that what do the concerned result mean. Okay, you have given the tables in the previous chapter. You have defined that what does p-value mean, whether your hypothesis is accepted or rejected. This all is given in results. But accepting hypothesis means what? Rejecting hypothesis means what? So the interpretation should be given in this chapter. Now, exploring the implications. Now, this section will clearly define that why and for whom the results really matters. So in beginning also, we have defined the motivation of research and for whom this research is helpful, or why we are doing this research. This is what we have mentioned in the beginning. In the end, we will clearly show this under the heading implication, like for whom and why our research was so important. Okay. And then we will acknowledge no research is complete. If any research is complete at the end, there will be no future scope of research. Okay. Nobody is going to do research in that topic in future. So definitely every research has certain kind of limitation. Maybe sometimes we will face the limitation in the data collection. Maybe sometimes the time is a limitation. Sometimes, now it depends the kind of study that you are doing, kind of research you are doing, what are the limitations of this study. So it is good that you should mention the limitations of the research in the end. So acknowledging the limitations means what that derives the results cannot tell us. Okay, it is definitely sure that when we have decided the scope of the research, we have decided the question according to the scope, and we are answering the questions that we have raised in the beginning. But there are some points, or there are some things that this research is not able to answer. Suppose I'm studying only Indian capital markets in our study. So the results that are drawn after analyzing Indian capital markets, the same results cannot be implied or cannot be generalized for rest of the world, maybe for US market, maybe for Chinese market or whatever. Okay, so the results cannot be generalized for different markets. So this is the limitation of my work. So for every market, if I want to reach to certain conclusion, I have to analyze that market again. Okay, so these kind of limitations should be mentioned in your thesis. And lastly, conclusion. So conclusion is to concisely answer the key research questions. This form of conclusion sometimes also incorporates the recommendation of future scope of research. So it is not only the conclusion that you are ending, you will also open the gate for future scope of research. And this future scope of research can be drawn from the limitations. So what are the limitations in your study? Could be the future scope of research. This study answered these many questions, and going further, you may work on extended version of the same topic, which could be the future scope of research. So in this thesis segment, it is significant to leave the reader with a crystal clear impression of why the research matters. Okay, in beginning, we have begun with the motivation, we have begun with the scope, we have begun with the questions. But in the end, by the end of your thesis, when you're giving the conclusion, the reader must be very clear about what he has studied, why he has studied, why it was important for him or her, and what are the clear conclusion or answers to the questions that were raised in the beginning. Now, what as a researcher we have to contribute to what has been already known. Okay, so from literature review, we have extracted the gap. Now we have answered the gap. So as a researcher, what we are contributing, how we are contributing to the society, okay, in terms of our research, okay, how we are contributing to the researchers who are working in the same direction. So it should also be mentioned in the end in your conclusion, that how you are contributing to already known knowledge. Something is already known in that area. Now how you are adding to that area using your research. This has to be mentioned in the conclusion or last chapter. And once you are done with your chapters, with the conclusion, you are ending your thesis. Post that, like in the beginning, we have beginning pages. So in the end, we have some ending pages. Now these ending pages includes reference list. Okay, it includes all the references that are being used in the thesis. You might have referred number of papers during your research work. You have to include all this in your reference list. Make sure that whatever names you have used, or whatever titles, or whatever articles that you have used in thesis will or are included in this reference list. Okay, this mismatch should not be there. I've seen there are number of papers which are rejected because of this, because people have used the names in text, names of the authors in text, but they forget to mention this in reference list. Okay, so it is good to add or do this work simultaneously. So whenever you are putting some name or article in your text, at the same time put the same name in your reference list also, so that this mismatch should not be there by the end. Then appendices includes all those things which are relevant for better understanding. Okay, it again, there may be some limitation of space, or may not be that important to show these kind of supporting things in the thesis, like your questionnaire. Okay, it should not be shown in your research methodology chapter, but it should be included in the end as appendices. So just in case somebody wants to refer that what kind of questionnaire for data collection, he or she can refer this by seeing the appendices. Okay, similarly, sometimes when we are running the test, we are getting very deep, lengthy tables, which is difficult to include in the thesis itself. So from these tables, we'll extract the relevant values that are presented in the chapter, but the detailed table can be shown in the end in the form of appendices. And once you are done with this, a continuous editing and proofreading of the thesis should be done. A thesis should be free from any typo error, grammatical error, okay, human error. Generally, this is, sometimes it is not avoidable. It happens. You will definitely find number of mistakes once you have submitted your thesis. This happened with me also. Till the time I'm reading, because now why it happens, because as a human, when we are reading the same text again and again, it happens that we skip the mistakes that we are seeing continuously for the long time. Okay, so it is better to include maybe your friend or somebody you trust, to ask him or her to read it on your behalf, to find out the basic mistakes if it is there in your thesis. So continuously edit it according to your need and get it proofread before submitting. Okay, so this is how your whole thesis is done. This is the summary, how you have written or how you have initiated and ended with your complete thesis. You begin with the title page, abstract, table of content, acknowledgements, and continue with introduction chapter, literature review, methodology, results, discussions based on that, conclusion, recommendation if it is relevant for your work, and appendices. Okay, recommendation could be replaced by references in our case. Okay, so wind up finally in the form of conclusion. Here I would like to show some don'ts and do's that we need to do while writing our thesis. Like the don'ts: don't use first pronoun. Okay, generally a thesis is done or written in third persons mode. Okay, we don't use I, we, me, us, my, our. These kind of terms, it's better to avoid. Okay, there was a time when these terms are completely, not used in any research papers or thesis, but now the time has changed. I've seen papers wherein now authors have started using we. Okay, our work. Okay, I, if he or she is a single author, it is, but it is a said rule that this should be avoided. Okay, because somebody who is reading is not the author. So when he or she is reading the text as I, he or she may not be able to relate it. So it's better to avoid these kind of words when you are writing your thesis. Then don't use archaic terms like thus, alas. These are not formal terms. These are not terms which are utilized in common English. So it's better to avoid these terms in our thesis. Instead of thus, you can write therefore, which is more formal as compared to thus. Okay. Then don't use any kind of slang. Okay. Again, academic writing should use common English term. It should not be casual writing. It is academic writing. So it is a formal writing. It's not a casual writing at all. So don't use any kind of slang in your thesis. Don't use cliches. Okay. Be very careful if you are using cliches in your thesis. Cliches means something which are considered vague. Okay. Which are already existing for the long time, like the dialogues of the movie, which is one side in the movie, people are copying these dialogues and these are becoming cliches. Everybody can use it. Okay, there are few examples of cliches, could be like in the nick of the time. So when we are writing limitation, I've seen theses where people have used this one because of paucity of time, because of lack of time, because of nick of time. So these are very commonly used terms. Okay, try to avoid these kind of terms. On the top of the word. Okay, short but sweet, last but not the least. So these kind of words should be avoided. Okay, when we are writing our thesis. Then don't use qualifiers, because we are not the one who are completing or ending or putting an end to any kind of research work. So really, very surely, hopefully, basically, these kind of words should be avoided when we are writing thesis. Then avoid overused scholarly phrases like never write in this paper, I will, okay, in the conclusion. So don't use these kind of phrases. Okay, instead of that, use formal words or formal English language when we are writing our thesis. And there are certain do's when we are talking about our thesis, like uh, we should write our work in absolutely plain style. Don't use any flowery or the tough languages or phrases for which every time, as a researcher or as a writer or as a reader, I have to look for my thesaurus. I have to look for my dictionary. Okay, and if it is really required, throw out your dictionary or thesaurus. Okay, use your own language, your own style, your own thoughts when you are writing your thesis. Use active voice when you are writing your thesis. Vary your state sentences structure. Okay, don't write similar kind of sentences again and again and again. So think of a reader when he is reading the same kind of long lengthy sentences with multiple clauses again and again. So he or she may get tired, may get bored after a certain period of time when he or she is reading your thesis. So try to avoid these kind of things. Okay, they will feel rushed by the series of short or test sentences. So it is good to use those short sentences, because it is easier for a person also, as a reader also, to grasp this or to convert it in our mind in the form of information when we are reading small sentences. So that it's not always that we should use small sentences, rather the length should vary as per the need. Okay, it could be a combination of maybe long sentences or short sentences, depending upon the context, the content that you are writing. Then use consistent tense. I have again seen papers and theses wherein they started with past tense. This used to happen, started with the history. They come in present and end with future tense. This should not be done. Generally, the academic papers or the research work or the theses that we are writing, the tense we use is present tense, because it's the most common tense in academic writing which is used. future tense can never be used except the future scope of research that you are given. That would be just one paragraph in the thesis. That's it. Okay. Exceptions are there for the past tense because thesis is like from the subject like history. Okay. And where you're using references to certain experiments that are done in past. Maybe we are using some theories, okay, from the past for our references. So there, of course, we can use past tense. Okay. So there are certain exceptions. But otherwise, it is always advisable to use present tense in our thesis work. Then have someone else, as I mentioned in the previous slide also, get it proofread. Ask someone else who is especially the person who is not related to your area or not read your thesis in past. Okay, ask him or her to read your thesis, okay, before you actually submit it, because he is the person who never came across your contact or content. Okay, he is the one who would be able to point out your minor mistakes in the thesis. Okay, so ask somebody to read it for you to point out those small mistakes and correct it before finally submitting it. Okay, so that is all from my side about writing thesis. So if you have any query, question, you are most welcome to ask.
The session is open for discussion now. You can post a question in the chat box or you can unmute and interact with the resource person. Thank you all.
Yes.
Thank you.
And if any of you want to see literature review papers or papers based on the analysis of thesis work, I can also show these. Okay, so just in case you don't feel like or maybe occupied with work right now, my email ID is mentioned here. Okay, you can write me later also in case you want to ask any question. Thank you for the feedback from Atul, Dr. Vanitha. Thank you so much. Thank you, Jyoti madam.
Post your questions in the chat box. I'll read it to ma'am. She's there to help you.
Thank you so much for the feedback that I can read from the chat box. I'll be happy to answer questions if you have any.
Please post your questions in the chat box. Any questions?
For case of writing article, how will reduce plagiarism? Yes, very important point. Okay, Dr. Vinita, thank you for the question that you have asked. Okay, when we are writing article, okay, so as I mentioned in this point also, it is not only for the research papers or the article, in thesis is also in most of the university now plagiarism is checked before submission. Okay, so it as per UGC norms, the plagiarism should be, even if it is for project work for the master students that we are doing, the plagiarism should be less than 10%. Okay, otherwise the plagiarism is considered as an academic crime. So for that very purpose, it is good that we are doing our when we are doing our analysis and research work on our own. Okay, what happens? We sometimes tend to read some author so much, we tend to write his or her, we have his or her language in our mind that we are putting again and again. So that is why I mentioned in the end that forget the dictionary, forget the content that you have read, write your content in your own language, reproduce your own thoughts, and you will see amazing difference in what you used to write and what you are writing now. I have seen my scholars who used to take or used to keep some research papers before writing, because they study these kind of papers, they tend to extract the content from the papers and they write it. So when they are writing the same thing, it is reflected in plagiarism. And if we are using the same sentences or maybe some quotes which are given, it's better to give it in quotes, which is not counted by any plagiarism testing software. Okay, like we are using Turnitin for plag check. So in that, it doesn't include those statements which are there in quotes. It doesn't include the bibliography at the end. So the best way of writing or reducing plagiarism is using your own language, your own words. Okay, and you will see the change in your writing if you write it in your own words. Then Jyoti man also asked that if I can suggest some UGC careless journal. So there is a website. I can just give me a minute. I can show you. I can share it with you. Okay. I hope this website is visible. Okay, I'll be sharing
Yes,
this link as well. There is a link. Okay, there are list of journals which are available here. If by name you want to search, you can share. Then there is a list, UGC Care list group 1, group 2. Okay, you can click any of these. I need to log in. Okay, you will see number of journals which are listed here. Okay, you can click any of these and you can find number of journals. You can find ample number of journals which are available, which are suited according to your need. Okay, so here is a list of clone journals as well. So be very careful when you are submitting your paper to any journal. So you can go through this list. You have hundreds of journals which are UGC listed, which are indexed with Scopus or Web of Science. Okay, as per today's need, it is required that we should focus on the journals which are of course UGC Care listed or Scopus listed or at least Web of Science listed. Okay, there is no point of throwing our research work in dustbin by getting it published in any random journal. So it's very important to find out that perfect journal according to your need or the scope of work that you are doing. I hope I'm able to satisfy the queries that are being asked.
Yes, ma'am. Any other questions?
Thank you. Okay. Thank you. Thank you, Jyoti madam.
Any more questions? Ma'am is there to help you.
Even after session also, if any of you want to reach me, here is my email ID. You can always write to me.
Any other questions? I think there are no more questions, ma'am. Shall we wind up?
Sure.
On behalf of IOT Academy, I thank Dr. Neha ma'am for the very informative and detailed session, ma'am. And we thank you once again for the amazing presentation. Your tips and techniques on thesis writing will be very fruitful and beneficial. And thank you once again for the enlightening and enriching session, ma'am. Thank you for your efforts.
Thank you so
Thank you,
much.
ma'am.
Thank you. Have a nice day, everyone. Hope to
Thank
see you
you,
soon.
ma'am. You're welcome. I thank
Take
all
care.
the participants for joining the session today. Thank you all. Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you. Take care. Bye-bye.
You're welcome.
Okay. Shall I leave the meeting now?
Yes, ma'am. Sure, ma'am. Thank you, ma'am.
Okay, fine. Thank you. Thank you, everybody. Have a very great day.
You're welcome, ma'am. Please fill the feedback form using the link. It has been posted in the chat box. Thank you all. Kindly submit your feedback using the link. It has been posted in the chat box. Thank you all.